Happy Easter, everybody. For those that are watching or listening, it's quite ironic, actually, and I just realized this, that we're recording an episode about one of the most historic PFP collections that ever exists within NFTs on Easter surrounding eggs. That is right. I'm sitting here talking with Adrian and Metablack, my apologies, two of the protectors of the Twitter eggs, two of the brilliant minds that have brought the Eggs DAO into the forefront, and it's been highly successful. I'm a part of Eggs DAO. These two gentlemen have taught me a lot around what a DAO is, how to even go about excavating and experimenting on Namecoin, which is the first altcoin, I should say. I always say it might be the first because in the historical NFT community, we uncover new things, but I think it's pretty certain that Namecoin is the first ever altcoin. So Adrian and Metablck, thank you guys for joining me here on Easter.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you,
Good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely, gentlemen. Also, right before we started recording this, Metablack posted the results to the Mint for Ukraine Eggs DAO raffle. I didn't win. I'm very upset now, guys. So if I have a little bit of a frowny face during this conversation, it's because I didn't win anything. But outside of that, Twitter Eggs is to me, it's like the culture hotspot within NFTs on Namecoin. There's so many different things that have evolved on Namecoin since Twitter Eggs. It was Twitter Eggs, then there was blockheads, then puny codes, historic domains. So much has evolved over the last 4 months or 5 months since I've been involved. I'm sure both of you gentlemen have been there a little bit even before me. So let's just go with some quick introductions. We'll start with Adrian. Tell us a little about yourself, how you got involved in crypto, and then eventually found yourself on Namecoin and within Twitter Eggs.
Sure. So my background is software. I've been involved in the software industry for probably coming on a decade at this point, in various capacities. And so obviously I'm predisposed to technology. I like technology. I do a lot of exploration in technology. So I discovered Bitcoin through that as a new technology, as opposed to a financial instrument. That was always my approach towards like cryptos. I came from the tech side. And then I got involved in Bitcoin and drifted in and out of crypto for years. Never really hooked me in a sense, until I discovered Ethereum, smart contracts, and then everything just kind of went ballistic from there. For me, the NFTs, kind of maybe counterintuitively to where I am right now, were quite a small thing. But like I didn't even participate in NFTs until fairly late on. Like a lot of people were already deep into NFTs before I even decided to take a look at them. Got into them through a couple of friends, and then it was those friends who discovered they were deep down the rabbit hole of historical NFTs, and then they one day pinged me and said, "We've just discovered these things called Twitter Eggs on Namecoin." I was like, Namecoin? I think I remember that, but I couldn't really remember what it was. But then we got in contact with the guy who had these eggs. We started speaking to him, and then it immediately clicked for me. I'm like, this is everything that's kind of represents this entire culture that I've been part of. The thing that really brought me to that is because these eggs didn't have a founder. They were an emergent phenomena that just happened as people were using the service to where you could put your Twitter profile onto Namecoin. And it just so happened that these eggs became a thing. And that whole the zeitgeist around that, where there was no founder, there was no team, and it just happened, really attracted me. And so I committed everything I could to helping get the word out and find what was actually on Namecoin. And obviously that's flourished now into what we now know as the historical NFT space around Namecoin.
And it's truly been a cultural moment for Namecoin. I was before I joined late November last year, I began exploring how it has even evolved, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit of the history about it soon. but both of you gentlemen were there before me. And then the Eggs DAO has just been so successful because of both of you gentlemen. And you both have helped contribute to not only the historical uncovering, but the innovation behind it, which the Eggs DAO within the historical NFT community was the first real DAO. And now we see multiple other ones kind of try to replicate the success because of it. So Metablack, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Metablack, and so I started maybe crypto around like 2014 or something like that. My background is more like, I would say, tech and finance. All my career I either build or work in a fintech companies. And for crypto, I was there at the beginning, not even to invest, just for the tech, because I found that quite amazing what happened in that space. And actually, it took me years before buying my first like ETH or even Bitcoin. And I think it was like 2 years ago I started, or even actually I started looking at NFT. But same as Adrian, I was not like at the beginning, I was not actually in Twitter, etc. So I didn't get it, what's going on with those NFT, etc. And then I start like looking into some blockchain, and I almost fell in love with some stories. So I discovered the Namecoin blockchain. I discovered some like a very smart guy actually saying, okay, you should go into that Discord and you should see they're selling like egg OTC, and say, come on, I'm not gonna buy an egg. You're not gonna ask me like to spend like 50K or something like that to buy a picture, right? And actually, I didn't buy an egg. I buy the story behind the egg, and I thought that's so interesting. I mean, it was the first time I was like downloading a full node for the blockchain, etc., to understand how it's going on, what those people actually did back in 2014. Even it was not really intentional. They were testing the technology, and I fall in love with the story more than the NFT, and then I started thinking like other blockchain, other like historical NFT, etc. And I met like a lot of people, and very smart people that actually I mean it's just crazy. Like a lot of people I know right now, I don't know their name, I don't know anything about them, but I learn a lot every single day. So it's quite an amazing journey, and the historical NFT space is I would say is full of very, very smart people. So I'm sure we're gonna speak after about the Eggs DAO, why we did it, etc. But I think we have so many like passionate people and smart people. So yeah, it's it was quite a good journey, and it's only the beginning.
But both of you and everyone in the Eggs DAO has taught me so much about the back end of how these blockchains even work. I've been in crypto since early 2017, but in terms of like the technical computation and navigating some of these historic blockchains, or I guess just vintage blockchains, it becomes highly, I guess you'd say, problematic, or it feels like when I'm on Namecoin sometimes, like I'm in like the early version of AOL, and it feels the same as well with Counterparty. But both of you have laid out different frameworks, which I'll come up and I'll show here in a second, of how to navigate all of this different stuff, and the way to, or I guess with Namecoin, right? The way that it works is, it was forked in 2011 off of Bitcoin. I'm going to pull this up here because this is what caught my attention, and Meta talked a little bit about the story, and the narrative is what drove him to find it. Look here, from December 9th, 2010. This is literally Satoshi Nakamoto, like the Satoshi, for those that are listening and watching, that created Bitcoin, talks about creating BitDNS, which is now Namecoin, but at the time it was BitDNS, and that Satoshi is literally going to fork his own project about a year and a half, almost 2 years since deploying it. Is this, did you guys look through this Bitcoin Talk forum when you first came across Namecoin? Was this the narrative that drove home to you, or was there something else specific within Twitter Eggs, the idea of Twitter Eggs at that time forming, that drove you to acquiring the asset and then staying within the community?
For me, I knew about this when I got into Namecoin. It wasn't really a thing that people were talking about to get into necessarily, around the NFTs especially. It was more, we got into it just because we we'd heard about these eggs, but we didn't even really consider them NFTs necessarily at the time. We just heard the story of how they got there, and that it was these people using Twitter who then uploaded their profile picture onto a blockchain, which was an experimental idea. And then when you place that in the context of when this was happening, Namecoin or not, the idea was incredibly compelling, that there were people who were tinkering with this technology, and there was this emergent thing with the Twitter eggs, where Twitter is obviously significant to this story because Twitter is where crypto exists a lot of the time. Like, crypto Twitter is a big part of the story of crypto. If you were to write, like, here is an anthology of everything that's happened in crypto, of the full history of crypto, Twitter would play a big role in that book. And that's significant to me. So finding this thing that was old and that was culturally significant with Twitter, and it was the tinkering that was happening in the day, to put these things on the blockchain, because they didn't know what they were doing. They weren't thinking we're creating non-fungible tokens. They were just thinking, here's a new technology, let's try something cool with it. And they did. And that is a very dynamic history to me. And that was just incredibly compelling. So that immediately sucked me in. When I put all of those pieces together, I was completely sold. So I was more sold by Twitter eggs than Namecoin itself. But then obviously over time, you just learn more and more about Namecoin and the kind of the riches that it has beyond Twitter eggs, which we came to discover later. But yeah, for me, it was definitely the eggs themselves that sold me, not necessarily Namecoin.
I share very similar views on that. And within the historical space, we debate this a lot of cultural significance versus historical significance. They sound very similar, but they have two completely different meanings. Historical significance is usually something in terms of innovating the space at the time, which in 2014, when Twitter eggs were created on Namecoin or minted, right? They're putting images into the blockchain, which was a very new idea. Now to us, it seems it's novel, right? Because we could just put bored apes and moonbirds and all these different things on a blockchain. And it just seems so normalized. But back then, it's quite interesting. And you see, it's the one thing that's cool within Namecoin, and I'll pull it up here in a second, is that they all have some sort of, there's a name attached to all these, which you can usually see somewhere here in the vault, but
should be at the top of the description, I think.
Yeah. And so right here, right? So it says u/arbiter, and that, or arbiter, and that is the person, that was the Twitter account, because they were basically minting their profile picture, which is literally, now PFPs are such a massive market, which is mainly driving the NFT space, but they were minting their profile picture into the blockchain, and that was their Twitter handle. So you see some interesting people like the Winklevoss twins, and there's a handful of other very public and popular contributors to these early innovations, which is what is so cool and interesting. But how about you, Meta? Do you like the historical significance? Is it the cultural significance, or is there something else behind it that drove you into being one of the protector of the eggs?
So I would say it was not Namecoin as well at the beginning. Actually, I was very reluctant to download the Namecoin blockchain at first because, it was just like a kind of a nightmare. I'm working on Mac, and it took me like maybe 3 days to get the full blockchain downloaded in my computer. But what I found quite interesting at the beginning is the fact that actually those people back in 2014 were not realizing that they were indeed like storing on chain those Twitter profile, and actually like one of the first profile pictures. And I do the analogy with like a greatest painter of the history who died like penisless, but right now when you find their painting, it's like worth like millions of dollars. So for me, that's a bit the narrative behind the egg. The fact that it was unintentional makes the story very interesting. And yeah, we saw that in the past, like a lot of scientific discoveries have been accidentally discovered. So for me, it's quite fascinating. And then once I got my egg, I was very fascinated and with the people, just the people. It's why actually right now it's maybe one of the reasons when I just all my egg because it's like my digital identity. You know, it's like people are see their digital identity as a punk, as a Satoshi Card, as a Nakamoto. On my side is the egg. I want to build a bigger community and to build the future with all those people actually who want those Twitter eggs.
Yeah, exactly. And so I have it pulled up here. There's 277 eggs of this collection of various colors. And Twitter eggs were one of the most popular, if not the most popular, default profile picture for Twitter. And they eventually had to be removed. I think I'll find it somewhere over here, but they had to be removed because from 2010, I believe, to 2017 is when they were the profile picture. People were literally not using themselves as profile pictures, and they were keeping the eggs as default. And it was messing with Twitter's evolution because they wanted mainstream adoption to it, and they couldn't have just eggs being everyone's profile picture because they wanted to further align it with actual human beings on the other side rather than these little pictures, which is kind of funny now because in the NFT space, we all have random pictures of cartoon characters and eggs and all kinds of different variations. But I like the cultural significance, and let's talk about this for a little bit. Right now, the Twitter X floor has fallen a bit, unfortunately, and it could be just a symptom of the historical space being highly illiquid because there's not mainstream adoption to it because it's not just like a quick flip. But the cultural significance of Twitter being heavily tied to the crypto space doesn't seem like it's changing anytime soon now, even with like Elon Musk coming in and trying to buy Twitter. What about it with the cultural significance is, I guess we could say, like a primary motive for people to invest? Or how do we bring people, or how do we bring attention to the Twitter eggs and kind of like tell the story of these 277 total eggs that exist on Namecoin? What do you guys think? How do we bring more attention to the eggs and this story?
I think it's quite a difficult thing to engineer. That's not really something that I would know a lot about, but my kind of thought around it is that it's just going to happen slower than it would happen for like any other NFT that was launching like now or in recent history, just because they have so much more velocity behind it. But as things get older, people start to pay more and more attention. Like there's a lot of things where like when it first came out, people weren't that bothered. And then over time, as it got older and older and older, and the meme was still alive that made that significant, then people then realized the significance of that artifact. So in the case of the Twitter eggs, I think people might not, because they're in the heat of the battle, so to speak, right now, notice the significance of it because the NFT space is growing and everyone's like seeing all these new projects flying at them. But then 5-10 years from now, if Twitter is still a big part of the crypto culture, then the idea of something that's nearly 20 years old as an NFT that is directly a real artifact of the historical usage of crypto users and Twitter, I think that people will start to realize the significance of that, because how could you not? Like if you were told that there was like some secret document to like the original like Ford motor car, like the Model T, and would you say that's valuable? It's like, well, yeah, probably. That seems quite valuable, like just because it's old and it's relevant to something that's obviously so significant now, because there's cars everywhere. The idea that cars are significant is a no-brainer. Everybody understands that. So going back to the first ever car, of course that's significant. That was the start of the revolution. So if we fast forward 10 years, 20 years, however long you want to go out into the future, and Twitter is still playing a big role in crypto, and even if it's not, if it's just remembered as having played a big role in crypto, and NFTs are still around, then the Twitter eggs are going to be seen as very significant. So when I say that I'm bullish on the crypto or on the Twitter eggs, what I'm really saying is I'm bullish on the NFT space as a whole, because Twitter eggs become valuable if the NFT space continues to grow in the way that we expect it to. And so like you just want to own something old because it's just cool. It's interesting. It's part of the history. It's part of the culture of how the thing grew. It's just got so much significance, as well as just being like a cool old thing to own.
Yeah, I completely agree. And so here I pulled it up an article. Twitter eggs existed as the default profile picture on Twitter from September 2010 to autumn 2016, according to this article. So 6 years of their almost now is about 17 years or 18 years of history, by far the most popular. And their new CEO has actually posted multiple times that they've thought about bringing it back. And so if Twitter eggs do come back as the default profile picture, man, what type of attention does that bring to the space? But Metablack is here, and he's even introduced the super cool idea of the Eggs DAO, which has helped bring even more attention to the Twitter eggs, but also driving different innovation within most historical artifacts in NFTs or in the real world kind of just exist, right? The Van Gogh paintings are just there to exist and to be viewed and to just like show appreciation. But now with Eggs DAO, every member who is a part or who's an owner can also invest in this DAO, which becomes an investment DAO. But Metablack, who's here, was the founder of it. And so tell us a little bit about Eggs DAO. What is the Eggs DAO trying to achieve, and how did you come up with this cool idea?
Yeah, definitely. So maybe let's do it very short at the beginning. So the idea of the DAO is very simple. I think we all agree, and but we can debate around that the Twitter eggs have an historical significance, and I just strongly believe that we can do better than that. I believe that actually the history should meet the future. So there are many like people that think that, okay, the historical aspect will make the job and that's it. I think it's true, but maybe not for every NFT. On our side, we try actually, we have very smart people within the community. A lot of people are advising and invest into projects. We try to be as much as possible involved into like many different projects within the NFT and crypto space. And the idea on the back behind the DAO, it's I would say if I just take analogy, it's okay. Let's take we launched the Eggs DAO like mid-December 2021, and after seeing actually the potential of many members of the Twitter Eggs community. So right now we have around like 50 members, and we don't necessarily target to be like 1,000 plus people, even if we right now are thinking of on how to let anyone participate. So we prefer to stick right now to a limited number of members, very involved with deep knowledge on of the crypto industry. So that's why the cost of entry is very high. You need to hold the Twitter eggs, plus you need to buy your own share of the DAO. So just to go back on when you said that the price of the eggs is falling, actually, I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, at the end, it will allow people with a lot of value to come into our community and to help us to promote the eggs and to bring value to the market. So we need to say that an egg is not cheap, right? Putting like 50K into an NFT is not an easy decision. So when you enter the DAO, actually, I wanted to set up something with everyone having the same voting power. There are no else like you see on some DAO. You enter, you buy for 1 or 2 hits, and actually you don't have any. You cannot do anything because you have just 5 or 10 people controlling everything. On our side, said okay, if you enter the DAO, you have the same voting power than anyone else. So we have like within the Twitter Eggs community and now within the DAO, we have like a lot of like experienced traders, developers, designers, blockchain consultants, advisors, funders, etc., etc. So I think we do have together the knowledge to run a business within the crypto industry. So most of the members are part of other crypto communities like Punks, Bored Ape, Artblock, etc., and we are all in close contact with a lot of crypto players. So we do invest into many projects within the crypto space and not only into historical projects. So yeah, as I said at the beginning, I don't know if you lost me there, but I just believe that history should meet the future. So that's not only the historical aspect that we want to bring with DAO, but is as well advising and investing into new projects. Of course, we are not a charity, even if we just did a charity mint a few weeks ago that we can talk maybe a bit later. But we want to build wealth and do the right investments. But we are so passionate by the historical NFT and the NFT space as a whole that we want to help and bring new stuff to the market, bring value and deliver that value to all the communities. So we want to leverage our members to build some new stuff. Just to give you an example, we have seen the recent proof of collective mints, more than 50K hits like traded in 24 hours. And you can see that people are investing in teams, in people themselves, than just paying 100K for a bird. So for me, it's like quite similar for the eggs. We don't have such exposure, of course, but I believe we have great builders within the community. So actually, the egg is your pass. It's a piece of history. And the DAO is a way for you to contribute and build the future. So yeah, I believe that together we are just stronger, and with smart people invested and involved into the crypto space, we can just achieve a lot of things. So that's why I've set up the DAO in December, and so far it has been quite good. I mean, a lot of people bring some ideas. We invest into a lot of stuff. We almost double up the value of the DAO. I think, of course, we were lucky, but I think because, I mean, if you have like 50 people, smart people together, I mean, there is no way you can fail.
Yeah.
Whatever is the price of the Twitter eggs, right? It's just people.
Yeah. At the end of the day, the Eggs DAO has a large surplus in the treasury now because of both of you gentlemen and everybody that's on the various boards within the DAO. It's primarily an investment DAO, but we've seen different things kind of pop up with whitelisting spots and historical digs and just sourcing all kinds of various information, because as you mentioned, there are a lot of intelligent people that are part of the DAO and also a lot of popular figures, right? We have Kyle Davies from Three Arrows Capital, Keyboard Monkey, Daryl Morey. You have Bitcoin OGs. You have people like myself, who's just a noob getting into crypto or getting into NFTs recently. So we have a wide variety of intellectual capital who all contribute to the various aspects of the DAO. And I think because of the DAO, and this is my personal opinion, has onboarded a lot of people to acquiring the asset and also being various contributors, because we all have our different niche within it. And as we saw recently, and what I mentioned earlier today, which you just posted here, the mint for Eggs Ukraine, right? Like, this could not be possible without the Eggs DAO existing. And this was quite an initiative among both of you gentlemen for having over 100 ETH in different rewards for minting these type of these eggs that were part of the mint for Ukraine agenda. Tell us a little bit about going or creating this, the Eggs for Ukraine mint. How much effort really went into this, and do you believe that it was like a successful initiative at the end of the day?
Yeah, so first of all, we are not a DAO involved with any political stuff. So what we have seen actually what happened in Europe and people suffering from the bombing in Ukraine, and we just wanted to help. So the idea was to just launch a charity mint, very simple. You can donate the amount you want, and you get actually NFT as a proof of donation. So that NFT has been done by an artist working for us. And on top of that, we said, okay, to actually incentivize people to mint, we said, okay, for each, I think it was 0.02 each donated, you enter into a raffle of NFT prizes donated by many people and projects. And actually, it has been quite successful. I mean, more than 50 projects, I think, like donating some stuff. We have like 58 prizes in total. Even like Cosimo Di Medici donating NFT. So yeah, I think it was quite successful. Of course, I think, even if you raise like just 1K, it's already a success. So we managed to raise like, I think around like 120K total. And we are raffling actually, I think around like 300 or 400K dollar of prizes. So I think it has been a success, quite a fun journey. And we managed to help people suffering from the bombing. So at the end, it was a good thing. And Adrian can tell more about that, but he was the one who did all the hard work on the smart contracts, the website, etc. So it was a lot of work, but it was cool to see the NFT space, and in particular the historical NFT space, coming together and donating like NFTs to promote that initiative.
Right. So for those that are listening, they're probably, if they're watching, they're seeing all of these various donations from Cosmo, Medici, the Twitter Eggs, the Misprint, Umbrella, Namecoin, Warp Sound, all of these ones, and the list goes on and on for all of these, right? The Satoshi Light. How do you get all of these donations? Was it both of you reaching out to these large figures like Cosmo? Did they reach out to you? How was this all set up on the back end? I'm also just personally curious because I have no idea.
I think Metablack probably has more to say about this than I do, but just before he jumps in, I'll interject. And I think the way that, so I didn't actually play much of a role in acquiring the prizes. I was doing all the building, but I think it's a testament to the DAO itself. And the reason that we created the DAO in the first place is this is a very good illustrative example where we hadn't planned on doing this. Then obviously when the bombing starts happening in Ukraine and everyone's outraged, and we just threw out the idea, like maybe we could do a raffle or something. And then we started throwing ideas around, like, well, we could do a mint, and the conversation snowballed. And the next thing we know, we've got a bunch of people who are doing different things, completely ad hoc, non-planned. And we managed to put this together very, very quickly. So we had contract, we had website, we had to acquire all the prizes, we had to do the artwork, we had to get the word out and tell people what we were doing. And we managed to do it because we have that kind of talent base in the DAO. And that was the reason we wanted to formalize it into a DAO in the first place, because it's a waste of all of our talents and all of the energy and the creative energy that we can produce within this group of people. It's a waste to not try and harness in some way. And that's what the DAO is doing. And this was the first kind of very real-time example of how quickly we can pull something together when we needed to.
Yeah, and it came so quick. I feel like I'd literally opened the Eggs chat, which is a token gated part of the Discord, and this just popped up literally within like a few days. I was like, wow, Adrian Meta is really putting work in for this type of initiative. But yeah, Meta, I'm curious on, and probably a lot of them listening, how do you put something together like this that involves so many prominent names and such a large value of ETH for prizes, and then raising 120K as well?
So actually, when we thought about that charity mint, I reached out to some guys saying, okay, this is what we're gonna do, and everyone was naturally saying, okay, I will donate that, I will donate that, I will donate that. And I say, okay, we know that people in Ukraine need cash. They don't need NFT. So we say, okay, we're going to ask all the community to donate a bit of it, and to reward them, we're going to do a raffle. And then all the project, actually, I would say half of them came naturally to me or to the DAO account and say, okay, we want to donate that. And for others, we just ping them and say, hey, no problem. We have some projects saying, okay, I just for example, NFT 2040, I discussed with the founder. I said, okay, we're going to do that. He straight away told me, okay, I'm going to donate, but I'm going to give you as well 10 of my NFT from my treasury. It was the same with crypto cards, with Aethers, with Alpacadabra, with all the projects. immediately they said, okay, we will participate with our NFTs.
Yeah, it's quite incredible. And like I said, right before we were recording this, you made the announcement of all of the winners. So if you are a winner and you're listening to this, make sure that you check, because you might be pretty happy about your winnings. But now I have it opened for those that are listening. I have opened the Eggs DAO treasury, which has 153 ETH. It also has a lot of various tokens from Emblem Vault to Eggs to Somnium parcels, Kiro cards. For those that aren't in Eggs DAO who are now pretty interested, enlighten us a little bit about the process that goes into the proposal of investing in an asset and the voting, I guess, discourse that goes about it, and as well as like the unwinding process. Because those that are in the Discord, they only see the general chat, which isn't that engaging. Like there's some conversation, but the Eggs chat is going constantly. So for those that are now looking at this treasury with, like $500,000 in assets and in ETH, enlighten us a little bit about the process for investing in these various tokens.
Adrian, you want to take it or shall I take it?
I mean, you're more on the investment side, so you go ahead, but I'll throw in some thoughts later.
Perfect. Yeah. So when I set up the DAO, I try to come with some governance documents that are not perfect, and we are trying to improving the process with time. But the idea is very simple. We have, let's say, 50 members, and we cannot have 50 members voting on each decision. It's going to take a while for each investment. So we break down the DAO into many committees. So we have the members committees. We're gonna accept new members or someone want to exit, and we have the investment committee, valuation committee, unwind committee, etc., etc. So each committee will be a subset of people of members of the DAO, and will have some responsibilities. So, for example, we have the investment committee. So it's 7 members voted by all the members and renew every month. And those people actually will be responsible to find some opportunity or to listen to other member on opportunity and to vote to invest on it. So for each proposal, a member from the investment committee we're going to come up with a plan. Okay, why we should invest that? What will be the target return? What will be the time frame? How many times we're going to hold it, etc., etc., etc. Is it just something to make profit? Is it something that we want to invest into the project for the long term? So I will say there is a strict process for each kind of decision within the DAO to be able to invest. And the same if you want to exit, to unwind or to sell some assets, if you want to evaluate, to publish the DAO value, etc., etc. So we have committees between, let's say, 5 and 7 people that is renewed regularly, and will be able to have their own responsibility and to be able to act quickly.
Right. Yeah. So there's various committees. I believe there's an investment committee. There's an unwinding committee. There's a marketing committee. And just through this process for my own personal education, I've learned so much on how DAOs actually operate. And I think Eggs DAO works within a pretty good space where it's not too large. The community, right, there's only 277 eggs. So theoretically, you can have 277 people in the DAO from a max standpoint, but it's not too large to where nobody ends up doing anything, but it's not too small to where it's heavily reliant on a few people, although Adrian and Meta do a large bulk of the work. We see here in the Eggs DAO, the investments contribute from a wide spectrum, from things like AI generative art of Warp Sound to historic projects like crypto cards to some derivative things like ethereal apes. It's quite an interesting process. And there's also ERC20 token investments as well. How did Meta, how did you come up with the proposal to create these committees? Did you have any sort of background experience in DAOs prior to this? Because when you put the proposal out initially, it was quite extensive. It was, I don't know, 5 to 10 different pages, and it was very intricate. How did you find this sort of like matrimony, or this sort of like perfect spot for Eggs DAO to operate this efficient?
So actually, I didn't get those ideas from other DAO. It was more from the real life work, right? When you run a company, etc., you need actually that each team has its own responsibilities. And then it was when drafting the documentation, I was saying, okay, we need to do that, then we need to sell the assets, then we need to evaluate the DAO, etc. So okay, I try to break down as many committees as possible, but try to fit with the number of Eggs DAO members. So it was more like coming from my real life experience, my own career, than on the DAO. And it was trying to leverage both, actually, like the fact that it's a decentralized way to invest and to use actually what I think works in real life. So yeah.
Yeah, it's been quite an amazing experience for myself. We didn't touch this in the beginning, but originally when the Eggs DAO was created, it was a 3 ETH investment. I believe we have about 50 to 60 people part of the DAO. So that helped the initial funding. And then I believe it's every 6 months, correct? I believe, yeah, you guys might be able to correct me, but I believe it's every 6 months. Then there's a payout to all of the Eggs DAO members, right? Is that right? Or I might be missing a few things.
That's correct. We have like a dividend committee. Actually, we're gonna vote on paying dividend directly to the members. If I'm not mistaken, on the initial governance act, it's gonna be every 6 months, but the first one gonna be paid 9 months after the creation of the DAO. So we expect around September. But again, it's in the governance, and the idea is to say we can pay dividend, and we want to pay dividend if we can do. But the idea is to keep the ETH into the DAO if we think it's more valuable than going into all members. So if we want to do an investment and we need those ETH, the dividend committee can say, okay, we're gonna delay the dividend payment. So it will depend, but yeah, on the governance doc, it's saying that at least every 6 months there is a vote from the dividend committee to pay out some dividends to all the members.
Yeah, that was what intrigued me the most, is that I get to be part of the DAO, and then in 9 months I can have my money theoretically paid back to me, and then continually learn and see all of these cool opportunities I could present to the DAO. It's really taught me how a lot of these back end like whitelisting opportunities are presented, which for better or for worse, I find quite interesting for a lot of these projects that present their whitelist to the DAO, and all of these different opportunities that are minted. That to me was like the big light bulb moment of how some of the backend framework for these new projects work in terms of getting exposure and getting the right type of communities, because I think the Eggs DAO kind of presents itself as a pretty established DAO with obviously a large treasury, but also a lot of brilliant minds that are attached to it. But I do want to focus back a little bit and come back to Namecoin itself. Twitter Eggs were kind of the first iteration of early NFTs that made it into the public purview and I'm talking just about crypto Twitter essentially. And then we began looking and finding different things, like I mentioned, puny codes and historic domains and some just regular minting images. But navigating Namecoin, right? It's feels so old. It feels like I'm like looking at cave drawings. How do we onboard new users to Namecoin or to these historic assets? Is it predominantly, do you think either of you, do you think Emblem Vault is the right answer to it? Do we think it's education? How do we get somebody who's just diving into NFTs to understand the significance of Namecoin and all of these various early experimentations that happened on this chain?
I think the end goal is probably to get people to really download Namecoin and tinker with it themselves. That's the ultimate end goal, because when you do that, that's where you really start to understand the significance, because as you say, it is like looking at cave paintings in a sense. And that really puts in perspective what's actually happening. When somebody says that was 2017 or that was 2014, it's like, I remember what I was doing that year. It's not like when you hear about like real cave paintings 20,000 years ago, that feels historic. When you try to convince somebody that was in 2014, it's really historic and significant, it doesn't resonate the same way. But when you actually download Namecoin and you dive into it and you realize all of the hoops you have to jump through, and it's painful, it's not easy to do, and you do it, and then you see what's actually happening, and you're like, oh my God, yes, like this is actually the Stone Age. Like this is significant. This is historical. But so having said that, I think that's the end goal, but I don't think we can point people in that direction initially, because it's too difficult and it will just put people off. And I think something like Emblem Vaults really does play a big role in that, because it's the same experience that people are used to. So maybe they've bought like a new drop like within the last several months, and that was them dipping their toe into the NFT space, and they kind of liked it and they liked the community and they want to go further. And then potentially they discover some of these historic Namecoin assets and they can buy one on OpenSea. It's the same experience that they're already used to, which is the gateway. And then you can join the Eggs Discord and the Puny Codes Discord and start talking with people and learning about the history and learning about why these things are cool, why they're important, why they will continue to be relevant. And then you have the motivation to want to download Namecoin. I think if you lead with the Namecoin thing, you just lose people, because it's difficult, it's hard, and you don't know why you're doing it. But if you already know the history and you want to see it for yourself, you have the motivation to push through. And there's also an incredibly helpful community in all of these Discords who can help you. There's been plenty of times in the Eggs Discord where people have had issues setting up a node, a Namecoin node, and they just drop their questions in the chat and people are there to help. So I think if that's something people are interested to do, I think it's a very enriching thing to do if you're interested in historical NFTs and specifically Namecoin, like just digging in and getting involved with running a node and seeing what's actually there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I pulled up the NFT Namecoin timeline. So the Bitcoin logo looks like it was the first image, might be, that was minted. We know the first ever NFT, I could say pretty confidently, is Bitcoin.bit. That was minted April 20th or 21st, 2011. And then we see all of these other various things that have popped up on Namecoin, between Monograph, which has a lot of controversy surrounding it, which we could probably talk about, Blockheads, which is a big collection, Twitter Eggs, and manga avatars and identicons. And this brings up like something that has been fudded consistently against Namecoin, was that there wasn't intention to these collections, right? Twitter Eggs is a collection of 277, but they were individual mints into the Namecoin registry, which were then collected after the fact and saying, hey, this is a collection of 277 that exists. Do you think this is a positive or a negative to Namecoin? Does that further incur more historical significance because it was 277 individuals with the same idea minting it onto the blockchain and then after the fact put as a collection? Or do you think it's something that we have to overcome in terms of framing the story of these Namecoin assets?
I absolutely think it's a feature. I think it is the feature for me as well. It's not some peripheral thing that I'm trying to spin. It is the single reason I like it is because it's emergent, because it's basically, you can say that like punks, and this is not a dig at punks, but it's just a good example, is the first kind of PFP. That was intentional. Somebody tried to do that. So they had this thought, they did it, and then it's an intentional act in the world, and people think that's significant. And that is significant because they had the thought. But the Twitter Eggs are significant for a completely different reason, because the Twitter Eggs just came out of, let's take a new technology, let's take some technologically curious people who want to build some stuff, and let's take a culture of people who are just using the internet in the way that people use the internet at that moment in time, which at the time was Twitter. And you slush it all together, And then what falls out? And what fell out is 277 people put the default profile picture on Twitter. They liked their profile picture so much that they were willing to go to a website that put it on a blockchain. Whether they knew that or not is irrelevant. They did an act to take their profile and put it onto this other website. And they didn't even change their profile picture because they loved the egg so much. And 277 people did that. That's a real like anomaly in the data, so to speak, that shows that there was something about that. There was something about having an identity on the internet in an image that was basic, and lots of people resonated with that. And that foreshadows PFPs on Twitter today, that we understand intuitively in the NFT space now that an avatar, like a cartoon picture, can be somebody's identity on the internet. That's so obvious to us now because there's plenty of people who make a specific avatar their personality on the internet. And the Twitter eggs and the number of people who wanted to keep those Twitter eggs as their default profile picture and locked it onto the blockchain, that foreshadows that for me. And it's just very significant culturally that would happen. That a Twitter profile picture ended up on a blockchain. Like, how can that not be significant given how prevalent profile pictures NFTs are today? It just seems incomprehensible to me how people can't understand the significance of that.
Yeah, that's exactly the reasoning why I came into it too. And I just pulled up the article from 2017 that says Twitter drops the egg avatar in attempt to break association with internet trolls, which, as we know, NFT Twitter and crypto Twitter could be a little bit of a troll. It's become a little bit of a meme. And this kind of just like reinforces the narrative of Twitter attempting to break away from their most popular avatar to not be associated with trolls, but now the troll is forever minted in the blockchain from 277 quote unquote trolls who now put it in there. And this article is from The Guardian, and it was a very popular article, and it was just like very public. And here's even a tweet from March 31st, 2017 of Twitter tweeting out that they're rethinking the default profile picture because of these different reasonings. And then the amount of backlash that Twitter actually faced from moving past the Twitter egg and having these quote unquote default dudes, which we could talk about here in a second, is quite interesting. But what about you, Meta? What do you think? Do you think these are distinct features of not only just Twitter eggs, but Namecoin assets, that they are all individual works that are then after the fact, 7-8 years later, looked at as historical collections?
Yeah, I think we are not like an historical project. It's an historical collection, but we are not an historical project. It's like people, as Adrian said, people like a few years ago was like testing the technology and importing their, Twitter was at that time their digital identities. So they were like importing their digital identities into the Namecoin blockchain. And they found like a technology to be able to forever store something into a blockchain. So yeah, it's quite, for sure, there is historical significance, and we cannot ignore the fact that those guys did that. They were not thinking about creating an NFT, but they were clearly like acting deliberately to import their identities, their name, their Twitter profile into the blockchain. And the Namecoin blockchain allows them actually to, I would say that's the whole point of like a decentralized namespace design such as Namecoin. And on top of that, the technical capability of Namecoin to transfer names has been done by nature actually to allow transfer, secondary market, etc., etc. So yeah, they were doing that on purpose. They didn't know that actually they were importing PFP, but they were testing a new technology. And for me, this is quite fascinating. Like only, if you think about that, it's only 277 people actually were back in that time say, okay, there is something there. Let's try.
Yeah, it's really some of the earliest ever images. I pulled up a tweet or a post from Satoshi Nakamoto themselves saying on December 9th, 2010, I think it would be possible for BitDNS, which is now Namecoin, to be completely separate network and separate blockchain, yet share CPU power with Bitcoin. The only overlap is to make so miners can search for proof of work for both networks simultaneously, which we now know Namecoin has merged mining with Bitcoin. But just the fact that Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever it is, proposed the idea of forking their own blockchain to create Namecoin, to me is just like such a like overlooked point within the Namecoin assets. Like the most popular figure who could quite possibly be the richest person in the entire world 5-10 years from now with the amount of Bitcoin that they have in their wallet. They literally created Namecoin, which was a spinoff, to then go on and experiment with other assets themselves. It's just such a iconic moment, and it's just like, oh man, I lose words of even trying to explain like what that significance really means. It's truly iconic. And recently on the podcast, I had on Paul, who was the creator of Umbrella, which both of you are familiar with. And in the podcast, we discussed how Namecoin, he dabbled on Namecoin back in 2011, 12, and 13, and how his experimentation on Namecoin was or helped him create Umbrella and trying to tokenize all of these various assets. It's all these experimenters, the Winklevoss twins, Satoshi, right? Like Paul, all of these early historical creators used Namecoin as almost like a playground to dabble into all these different ideas, which then become on to be these like very expensive and historic moments. It's just such an understatement.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the sense of kind of exploration that is evident in Namecoin is just very inspiring to all of us. I think that there were just these like people who were just doing it, not because they saw any lucrative opportunity or any other like motivation other than the motivation to just explore the technology. Maybe some intuition that it might become valuable in the future to know this stuff, but they couldn't possibly know what. So they're just kind of trying stuff. And like there's, especially in the modern crypto world, there's a lot of sense of I'm doing this because there's money to be made, or I'm doing this because like there's this strategic opportunity, where they weren't thinking about any of that. They were just doing it because it was cool and it was technology that they enjoyed interacting with, and they were just trying to push the limits of what was possible. And I find that very inspiring.
I completely agree. So here I pulled up the Ethereum white paper that Vitalik posted. It was updated recently, but I think it was originally posted in 2013. And here he literally called Namecoin NFTs, essentially. He says the ownership of an underlying physical device, smart property, non-fungible assets such as domain names, quote, Namecoin, quote. So for a lot of, you call them fudders or people who are just misunderstand Namecoin, they say that they're not NFTs. Ethereum, which is just put NFTs into the mainstream and into the spotlight. Vitalik literally calls Namecoin assets non-fungible assets. I don't know if that needs to like put it to rest. So you have the creator of Ethereum calling it non-fungible assets. You have Satoshi themselves forking Bitcoin to then experiments with decentralized DNSs. It's just all of the information is out there into the public. It's reinforced by all of the leaders. There is the one thing too that I see a lot of people misunderstand about Namecoin is the expiration, right? It's very similar to ENS, where you register something and it's for a certain amount or a certain time length, generally within the years. On Namecoin, it's every 8 months it has to be registered. Also, I'm going to propose the same question. Do you think this is a feature of Namecoin? Do you think it's something that maybe needs to be fixed? What about the expiration of some of these NFTs do you think is maybe a positive or a negative to either of you?
Go ahead, Meta.
I mean, for me, I would say it's there are a lot of discussion and debate around that. People saying it's not an NFT because of that. As you said, I mean, Vitalik himself described Namecoin as a non-fungible asset. But I mean, for me, I would say it's, of course, you have solution right now and events that automatically renew your domain. User back in that time were like a fund value of registering information on chains through those domain. And they were keeping renewing their name until they found the utility dropping to zero, or they don't want it anymore. Then the domain expires and it becomes property of the blockchain. So it's still there, and any other user can find utility on that domain and renew it. So for me, the name still hold value, and everything is it's just owned either by, let's say, the blockchain or by the user. So I would say it's a feature. Then you can like it or not. But for me, there is no debate, I will say, to say, okay, because of that feature, it won't be a non-fungible asset. It's non-fungible. You have it in your wallet. As long as it's your wallet, it's non-fungible. Then, if you're not renewing it, you are giving it back to the blockchain.
Yeah, you couldn't put it any better. Go ahead, Adrian.
I was just going to say, I completely agree with that. That, like, I think it's not even, you can't even possibly start an argument to say that makes it non-fungible, or that makes it fungible, that it's not a non-fungible asset. It definitely is. That's obvious. The question has always been around, like, does it expiring make it a problem? Does that make it not worth anything? Because if I put 100K into a blockhead and then it expires and I lose the blockhead, like, do I ever want to buy the blockhead in the first place? And some people might say no. I think that argument doesn't really make sense, because there's already things that in the world that we understand to be valuable that expire. Like if Google.com expires, I would buy it. Like if you offered me to buy like if I could register Google.com for like 2 pennies that it costs to register a Namecoin asset, I would register it. Like, you're telling me that Google.com's not valuable? Like, obviously it is, because it has significance baked into it. It's intrinsic to Google.com forever now. It doesn't matter what happens to the company. Google.com will always have significance in the history of the world. And whether it expires or not just means the owner didn't renew it. The owner didn't want it anymore, or whatever, as Meta touched on. But the asset itself has not changed. It's just changed ownership. The ownership has been subsumed back into Namecoin. And so it's always going to be valuable, those assets, because they are non-fungible. They don't change just because they expire. All of the old data is still associated to it. It's just owned by the blockchain now. And now if somebody registers it, they own it now. Well done. But all of the data, the provenance, the history, it's all still there because it's intrinsic to the token. So yeah, I think maybe lazy people don't want to renew things. Fair enough. If you don't want to buy something because you don't want to renew it, that's fine. But don't FUD other people's lack of laziness around it.
Yeah, absolutely. You really have to take the initiative to go explore this blockchain and learn about it. That directory that I was pulling all of the information through this entire conversation was something that I curated back in November, and that was just browsing the internet, because there is not that much information. But for the early pioneers who excavated it, and then those of us who invest early will eventually reap the rewards. It's a long-term game, especially if you look at it and you compare it to the traditional world with like Sotheby's and Christie's and some of these historic assets that take hundreds of years to appreciate, but it eventually breaks away in terms of value and never comes back to some sort of floor. Obviously with crypto, that we're 24/7, 365 market. So that market cycle is much faster than the traditional world. So it will be interesting to follow. But one thing I do want to talk about before we close this out is one of the other FUDs, and it's not talked about a lot. And you know, this topic or this conversation could hurt the value, it could not. But when I first came into the Discord, there's this idea of the collective, right? There's this group of people who went in and claimed most of the eggs in the beginning. And when I first came into the Discord, both of you gentlemen were running the Discord and operating it. And I thought you guys were actually the collective at some point, this mystical group. How do we go about dispersing or distributing these eggs? Do you think it's something that's holding the community back? Although the collective has been quite generous to donating to the DAO and some of the marketing campaigns and some of these other various, I think this is something we should talk about, because it's been proposed in Twitter and in different podcasts. People have discussed it. What is your guys' perspective on it, as being like the Discord admins? You, at the very beginning, you had to go back and forth with communicating with this collective. Just what is each of your perspectives surrounding this, and then how do we kind of get over that hurdle, if it's maybe positive or negative?
I think it's something that's going to live with the egg community for a while, unless something drastic happens that I don't think will. Whether it's a positive or negative, I'm not sure. I think there's ways you can look at it in both a positive and a negative. But I think if you actually look at what's happening objectively, the collective, whoever they may be, has been very generous, and they are being forthright with the community. And when because there's been a couple points where the tension around them has bubbled over, and people have been like, "No, seriously, we just need to know what's actually going on. We need some transparency." And generally, they've done what everyone's wanted them to do. So I think, in a sense, we have to give them the benefit of the doubt that they are just people trying to protect their own privacy, and anonymity is a common thing in the space, and I think we all intuitively understand that. The issue around it, for me at least, is how they've kind of how it came to be and how they positioned themselves initially. I think they made some mistakes along the way, because it was fairly secretive initially to us. Because my context on this is that I was brought in as kind of the tech guy by three people who had seen what White Rabbit was talking about on Twitter, and they'd reached out and ended up getting connected with what ultimately became the collective. But they were speaking specifically to John, who is in the Discord. And he was feeding us this information. And then we took it upon ourselves to be like, there's something here, and we need to start selling these because we need to distribute the supply. So then we were trying to get him to be as transparent with us as possible. How many of the eggs do you have, really? And I think that's where there was a bit of a breakdown of communication. Intentional or not, I'm not sure, just by the way things played out. But we ended up losing track of how many they had, and then it turned out they had some more. And then we did a full scrape and found some additional ones. And so there was a lot of confusion around that. And I think there was just so much new stuff that was new information that was flying at all of us at the time, that none of us were really thinking that this was going to turn into something and how to structure it well. And then by the time the Discord had already blown up, we found ourselves still not really knowing who this collective were. And then we didn't realize, and this was definitely a mistake on our part, myself and Mr. K and DK and Kilgore, who were the original moderators in the Discord, we didn't really distance ourselves from it because we didn't realize that everyone assumed that we were just one group. And that created a lot of tension initially, because they thought that we were, Mr. K and DK and myself, who were doing the OTC deals, they thought we were the ones selling them a lot of the time. But we weren't. We didn't own any of the eggs that we sold. We were purely brokering for the collective, or it wasn't even a collective to us at that point. We just knew John, and we were brokering those deals. And then everyone thought that we were part of the collective, but we weren't. And then we were getting annoyed at the collective for the same reasons that everyone else was. But then we were caught in the middle because everyone thought that we were part of it. And that was fairly tricky to navigate. But I think we did a fairly decent job when we just realized what was going on. And we're like, okay, we need to have a conversation. We're not part of them. We're not getting paid. We're doing this just because we like the eggs. And then from that point forward, it feels like the collective has done a lot. They've donated NFTs. They've given us some funding. And they've been generous to the DAO, to the eggs community, and to the individuals who have done a lot of work, myself and DK and Metablack. They've been generous to all of us. So I think from that perspective, we have to give them benefit of the doubt. They're just people trying to hide their privacy. we need to respect that. But then the other side is I do think that there is some tension around it still, and there will be for as long as they exist, because people are scared of how much they own of the supply. There isn't fixed numbers. Like if it turns out that they own another 150 of the eggs, like I don't think it's that much, but if it did turn out that they own that many, that would be a problem for the community because they could just dump them. And there's already tension around like the dropping price. And if this sort of information came out that they did have that much supply, it would not be good for us. So there's definitely some water for us to tread there to make sure that we navigate that correctly. But I think we can. And I don't think long-term it's going to play much of a role to the value of eggs.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Right when I came into the community last November, it was like, I think at the height of the tension, it was that, like I said, I thought you guys were the collective, and then trying to understand what that was, the group of people who came in and collect all of it was quite confusing, but getting that separation, and there has been a lot of clarity, and they have provided different, I don't call them guarantees, but they've provided different insights on like what the intention is with it, and also respecting their privacy. So I think we have gotten past it. I would assume probably, this is just me speculating, at some point in the future, if there was a dramatic, or whenever there's a dramatic increase in the price, they'll probably donate more to the DAO or do more initiatives like the Eggs Ukraine or all of these different components to it, because there's no way you're going to be able to distribute, if they do own another 50 or 100, there's no way you're going to be able to distribute all of them at 100 ETH or 200 ETH or whatever the price is. But you guys have done an amazing job, and if the collective's listening, they've done a good job at explaining ever since that like heat of the moment and the time. And I think having this conversation is really great because there is just a lot of uncertainty surrounding it, but it's just like there just isn't that much information out there. And so if there's not a lot of information, if there's not a lot of information surrounding something, then people will just associate it with negativity and FUD until there is some sort of public conversation around it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. And it's difficult because it did grow so much quicker than we anticipated it. We started selling the eggs OTC just because we knew we needed to distribute the supply if these things were going to be successful. And we thought they were cool. So other people might think they're cool. So we started distributing them OTC. And then the Discord had 1,000 members before we even knew what was going on. And there was people left and right popping up wanting to buy these things. And like it was a full-time job for us selling those OTC, and we all have like real lives and additional stuff to keep up with in crypto. So it was a big commitment for us, but we did it purely just because we thought these things would be valuable and people would like them. But then we got caught up in that and forgot that this was a public facing thing because we didn't see it as a project. So if we founded a project, of course we would understand that we need to be transparent, we need marketing, and we need to like have a structure and present ourselves to the world. But we didn't see ourselves as a project. We just saw ourselves as the people who had the network that we could be able to distribute these things to as many people as possible. And then we found ourselves being seen as the project around it. And as a result, we were drastically unprepared for what we were going to make, what we were going to face. And yeah, that definitely meant that there was a lot of confusion around how it was structured and who everybody was and what the players' incentives were.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the prominent figures who became interested in acquiring these, right? Vincent Van Doe and Keyboard Monkey and like Theros Capital, Poseidon Fund, all these different people who have large treasuries, personal treasuries, and also DAO treasuries to allocate into these is something that you probably couldn't have foreseen until they became very interested in acquiring these vintage eggs. It's quite a fun story, but I think that's what adds even more to the historical initiative and the historical value. And then to see what comes next outside of just the DAO. I know I won't say too much because it's private within the Eggs chat, but there's all kinds of ideas of whatever the next innovation will be contributed to the Eggs DAO. That's something that I find most interesting and why I haven't sold my egg and I continually participate is because I know with the gigabrains like yourselves and everyone else in the community, there's going to be something really big in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a testament to Meta for what he's done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's everyone within the. I'm quite active, but I think everyone is at the end contributing. But I think maybe something to add is on top of being an historical NFT, it's quite a cool NFT to just have. I mean, this is almost only NFT you can mix with a punk, with a Bored Ape, with any other NFT you have. I mean, if you look at my PFPs, I think there are like 4 NFT within one, all nested into an egg. So this is quite cool, actually. You can, I mean, people are using NFT as a profile picture. And when you have a punk and you have an egg, I mean, it's difficult to choose, right? Are you choosing the egg or the punk? With the egg, you can nest any NFT within the egg. And this is quite cool as well. And this is why you see like many like people actually mixing their favorite NFT within an egg. So I think this feature is quite a cool one, actually. You don't need to choose, actually. You can put everything into an egg.
Yeah, the nesting within the PFP, like you see with Keyboard Monkey's profile picture and yours and many others, so you could put any of your favorite NFTs in the egg as your default profile picture. Quite fun. I had that for a long time with my Mooncat until I changed it recently. But I just want to thank both of you for coming on and giving these amazing opinions and explanations. I get questions all the time surrounding eggs. So for those that are listening, I hope this enlightened you a little bit with the story. We could probably sit here and talk for another 3 hours on everything else that we didn't cover in terms of the technicals and even various forking stories of it. And it just like, it's an endless rabbit hole. But Adrian and Meta, thank you guys for joining me. I really appreciate it. Is there any final words, anything you'd like to tell the audience before we get out of here? And then you guys could go enjoy your Easter Sunday.
Thank you very much, Jake. Nothing really to add, just come into our Discord. You can check out us on Twitter. The community is open, and I'm sure you're going to have fun time with us. So thank you very much for your time. It was great to talk for your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for having us. It's been a blast. Always enjoy talking about crypto, NFTs, Eggs DAO, and I think I encourage everybody who hasn't been in our Discord to come and have a look, hang out for a bit. And there's a lot of really smart people, and they're active, as Jake said before, but significantly more active in the kind of the egg holder part of the Discord, but everyone is still part of the rest of the Discord, and there's still activity that flies around, and sometimes there's like little leaks of alpha here and there that can be useful. So it's just a good place to hang out. So come join us.
The alpha in the Discord is amazing. That's where I've found a lot of the historical digs, but also a lot of investment opportunities. So thank you both again, and everybody who made it this far. I hope you learned a lot. Join the Discord, follow both of these gentlemen, and thank you for listening and watching. We'll catch you next time.